Welcome back, my poets, to Poetry 101. This week will be less of a, let's discuss this thing and let me try to explain this thing to you. This one is going to be more understood in practice, so we are going to be doing it in practice. There we go. We will be reading a poem called Visit to St. Elizabeth's by Elizabeth Bishop. This is a phenomenal poem, and this is what I am going to be calling, as you have read in the title of this video, the Adeline poem. Not Adeline as the person name, but add a line poem. You will see what I mean. In our stanza number 1, this is the house of Bedlam. Stanza 2, this is the man that lies in the house of Bedlam. Do you see where we're going with this? Why did that give, are you sure about that?
Are you sure about that?
Number 3, this is the time of the tragic man that lies in the house of Bedlam. I'm going to pause here and explain for those who get it and are kind of done with me just reading. This poem does each stanza with one extra line. So we start with a single line, this is the house of Bedlam, add a line, and now we have 2 lines that say, this is the man that lies in the house of Bedlam. Again, line and sentence does not mean the same thing, hence why this is a full sentence that is taking up 2 lines. We're going to continue to do the same thing. Now, the main point of this is that the house of Bedlam is going to stay the same. There is going to be a man in that house. The facts of him are not going to stay the same consistently, because I feel like when I teach this, my brain is saying, okay, so you have one line, and then you add to that line, and so you're repeating the first line and saying your new line, and then you're going to repeat those 2 lines and say your third line. Then you're going to repeat those 3 lines and say that fourth line. That's not really how this works. How it works is you get to embellish. Keep the details the same. They don't have to be in the same order. We're going to see that with A Visit to St. Elizabeth's. We're going to see this in the poem where she says the same details but says them in different ways, and as we get new lines, some of those details are going to change and shift, but the things we have are going to be the same. So right now, for those of y'all keeping a tally, we have the house of Bedlam and the man in a bed there. The bed is not important. The man there is. So let's continue on. So we just read, this is the time of the tragic man that lies in the house of Bedlam. So now we know that this man is tragic and he is lying in the house of Bedlam still. Good to know. Next line. This is a wristwatch telling the time. So we just learned that this is the time, the era of this man who lies in the house of Bedlam. Now we say, okay, this is the wristwatch. It's his. It tells the time of the talkative man. I am assuming this is the guy in bed, because when you're lying in bed, what else are you going to do but jibber jabber all day? That's why some people talk in their sleep. Shout out my grandma. The talkative man that lies in the house of Bedlam. All right, next stanza. This is a sailor wearing the watch that tells the time of the honored man that lies in the house of Bedlam. We're discovering more lore right now. For people in the future who don't say lore anymore, it's like backstory. I hope you all still know what backstory is. How else are you going to understand Phineas and Ferb? And he is a tragic man who likes to talk a lot and has a lot of honor. And I don't think it is because it's honored. It's not like he gives a lot of honor. It's more like he is honorable. That is my understanding of it. He is still lying in the house of Bedlam, supposedly, presumably, on a bed. Next, this is the roadstead, all of board, reached by the sailor wearing the watch that tells the time of the old brave man, more lore unlocked there, that lies in the house of Bedlam. Okay, so this man is tragic. This man is talkative. He is a jibber-jabberer. Me too. Can relate. He is honored. Cannot relate. And he is old. So that's why he's in this house. And he is brave. Or at least once was brave, enough to be called brave now in his old age. Remember, the title of this is St. Elizabeth's, so we are assuming he is in some sort of like old person home or hospital. I say we, it's me. I'm assuming these things. Next stanza says, these are the years and the walls of the ward, the winds and the clouds of the sea of board, sailed by the sailor wearing the watch that tells the time of the cranky man that lives in the house of Bedlam. More lore undropped. This old man is honorable, or was honorable. He was brave, presumably still is. He talks a lot, and what is he talking about? Complainer things. Next part. This is a Jew in a newspaper hat that dances weeping down the ward over the creaking sea of board beyond the sailor winding his watch that tells the time of the cruel man that lies in the house of Bedlam. Okay, so more backstory unlocked. This guy is not just cranky. It's not one of those like, Oh, but he served in the war. So we still honor him even though he's like a grump. We are now calling him cruel, which typically implies, hey, this guy's a bad guy. We don't mess with him. He's cruel. Basically, he needs to be left alone. Other thing, in this place that we are, presumably St. Elizabeth's, which I like that she named the place after herself. So now we know that there is a Jewish person here. He's wearing a newspaper hat and he is dancing. Dance is weeping down the ward. I don't know what dance is weeping mean. It could be like that. It's either like that or it's more like a sweeping kind of dance, and we're just calling it weeping because it's a little more droopy than normal. Droopy looks like this when it comes to dancing. I'm a professional. I know what I'm talking about. I lived in New York.
I lived in New York.
We know that the sea is creaking, meaning it's making noise. A sea of board, which I'm guessing the sea of board is not like the actual sea. I'm guessing that's like the stairwell, the hallway. The sea, it's just a scape of board. Board is wood. The wood creaks in this building. That's my interpretation. I can be wrong. That's okay. The sailor is now winding his watch because it is an old-timey watch and you gotta wind them to make sure they still work. And it still tells the time of this man who lies in the house of Bedlam. Okay, next one. This is a world of books gone flat. This is a Jew in a newspaper hat that dances weeping down the ward over the creaking sea of board. Of the baddie sailor, our character information is getting deeper. That winds his watch that tells the time of the busy man that lies in the house of Bedlam. Okay, so the guy who lies in the house of Bedlam, he is busy. And is he just busy running his mouth or does he have like actual paperwork to do? I don't know. We haven't gotten there yet. And it might not even be in the poem, so do not quote me on this, okay? The sailor, however, we now know is crazy. So crazy they call him Batty. Like he got bats living in his brain. That's wild. This is a boy that pats the floor to see if the world there is flat. For the widowed Jew in the newspaper hat, another character getting his lore dropped, that dances weeping down the ward, waltzing the length of the weaving board. By the silent sailor, who hears his watch that ticks the time of the tedious man that lies in the house of Bedlam. The lies in the house of Bedlam is pretty frequent. This is what I would encourage you to do when writing your own out-of-line poem. Lore we have learned now. Okay, so there's also a boy. He is patting the floor to see if the world is flat. He's a flat earther. He's patting the floor because if the floor is flat, the earth is flat. Kid logic. The Jewish person is widowed. So maybe he is dancing and crying because he misses his lover. Hence the weeping. Again, the lore drops. We understand the poem a bit more. He's waltzing. That's the kind of dance he's doing. The length of a weaving board by the silent sailor. So the sailor, he quiet. He crazy, but he quiet. The man in the bed is tedious. And is he tedious to listen to? Or does he find life tedious? I think he's tedious to listen to because he is a grumbler and a complainer and he has not shut up. Remember our previous lore. Second to last stanza. These are the years and the walls and the door that shut on a boy who pats the floor to feel if the world there is flat. This is a Jew in a newspaper hat that dances joyfully down the ward into parting seas of board, past the staring sailor that shakes his watch that tells the time of the poet, the man that lies in the house of Bedlam. Okay, so the crazy guy? You're not going to believe this. You probably haven't realized this from watching my videos, but poets be kind of crazy. More lore. The Jewish person in the newspaper hat is no longer crying as he dances. Now he's dancing joyfully. Down the parting seas of board. Again, if we are going with my assumption that this board would be like, I can't open this door. It's my closet. It's locked. If we're going by my assumption that board means wood, the parted board would be like 2 doors. So the doors are open and he is dancing past them. And as he dances past them, he sees our little sailor. He was a sailor boy. He said, see you later, boy. He is now staring. Probably, presumably, because our Jewish person has just run into the room and he is like, oh my gosh, this person just ran into my room. The staring sailor could also be staring at his watch because remember, he's shaking it. So he's like, which relatable, me too. Final stanza. And the audience says, praise God. This is the soldier home from the war. Aha! These are the years and the walls and the door that shut on a boy that pats the floor to see if the world is round or flat. So now he knows there's another option. Good for him. This is a Jew in a newspaper hat that dances carefully down the ward, walking the plank of a coffin board with a crazy sailor that shows his watch that tells the time of the wretched man that lies in the house of Bedlam. The sailor is crazy, presumably from the war, and when we say sailor, we now mean Navy men. All of this means it's a lot sadder than you originally thought it was when we started reading. But that is the fun of Adeline poetry. You can do it, write it in one of two ways. I would recommend writing in order, because that's how my brain works. If your brain does not work like mine, you can start backwards. Have your 10 line, I don't know if that one's 10 line, I have no idea if it's 10 stanzas. Do 10 lines, and this is the full story. And then tell the story in reverse. So then, once you have the 10 lines, then start at 1 or work back from 9 to take away part of that story or add to part of that story from the full 10 lines and the full story that you are going to tell with your last stanza. That is your prompt of the day. Thank you for watching this video. If it is hard to understand what I mean, please comment below, ask any questions you have. I would love to answer them. You can watch more of the series here. You can subscribe here. You can send your poems to me on Instagram at @officialjustinstrikes. Share with me all of your things, and you can go see some of my poetry over there. Thanks for watching.